I think I would like to dedicate this talk to Tiger and Buckeye. They may be the only ones to appreciate it. Well, I'll probably get weaker and sink as we go on. No warranty available. After all is said and done, after all the political promises and priestly proclamations, we are left with the realization that life comes with no warranty, no guarantee. There are no assurances, no indemnity, no promises. There are no reasons, pardons, excuses, exonerations, or alibis for life. And there are no exceptions. Life is what it is, just life. As Saul Bellow phrased it in Dangling Man, 1944, quote, alternatives, and particularly desirable alternatives, grow only on imaginary trees, close quote.
That's it.
Throughout all the human ages, we have sought ways to circumvent the natural order of things. Regardless of how ingenious we have been, we have failed to alter the progression of universality. We have invented thousands of gods who have all failed to save us from ourselves. We have formulated 100,000 religions, each failing to deliver on promises. Confession has not eliminated our misdeeds. Gifts to gods and to churches have not made us holy. Absolution has not diminished evil. Surrender has only made us weak. Prayer echoes unheeded, and hypocrites still practice religion horizontally so that all around them can see them and admire them. Heaven and hell remain in the dominion of one's own perception, and the vulnerable remain at the mercy of grace or greed. If we separate ourselves from the faithful, who are often vulnerable to being faith-fooled, then we must accept the fact that there is no one to run to and there is no place to hide. This act alone, however, gives us the freedom from institutional deceptions, as well as the privilege and responsibility of choice. The rich marrow of life, diluted with rescue fantasies and paradise promised, dilutes the real joy of life. Life is delicious unto itself, without additives, and it is capable of satisfying the most demanding critic. Henry David Thoreau expressed it in this way in Walden, and I quote, I went to the woods because I wish to live deliberately and to front only the essentials of life, close quote. While masses of people choose to humiliate life by encumbering it with bangles and baubles of fabrication and fantasy, it mystifies me. No religion could ever offer the promises greater than those from life itself. H.L. Mencken said, and I quote, the most costly of all follies is to believe passionately in the palpably not true. Ralph Waldo Emerson, of Unitarian fame, in his work The Poet, Essays, Second Series, 1844, wrote, "The religions of the world are the ejaculations of a few imaginative men. The fact that millions upon millions of people believe in these imaginings attest to the power of our belief in the magical, and it also demonstrates the blind faith we place in the clergy. The choice seems clear. We can choose life to its fullest, or we can imprison ourselves in ancient tribal mythologies. Mythology should be used to teach morals and ethical lessons, not to arrest the evolving human mind and consciousness. It's a dangerous trap to arrest oneself in unquestioned belief. The more you believe, the more you need to believe to prevent a mental shattering. It's never fair to quote a writer out of context, but I would like to quote Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. In his Divine Meditation, written in 1957, he wrote a line that surely must cause us to pause. He said, quote, "We have only to believe, and the more threatening and irreducible reality appears, the more firmly and desperately we must continue to believe. As a believer falls deeper and deeper into a system, that investment in the belief becomes greater and greater. The more invested we become, the more wrong the rest of the world looks. The rest of the world looks increasingly more dangerous and threatening. Over time, the differences between the believer and everyone else appears to be greater and greater, until it begins to appear that violence for security and protection is necessary. Violence is a throwback to our tribal past when myth ruled the world. We do not need the imaginings of others with hand-me-down ideas to give meaning to life. We do that by the way we live, by using rational thought and the personal interpretation of our own experience. Life's meaning comes from us, from what we do with the way we live. It is our experiences, our perceptions, and the choices we make that makes life meaningful. Humanity stands, I think, on the cusp of a new reality. A reality based on a recognition of self-determination with a core of self-responsibility. Erich Fromm, in Man for Himself, 1947, expressed it eloquently when he wrote, quote, "There is no meaning to life except the meaning we give to it by the power of ourselves unfolding, by living productively." I think that it is our task to be authentic, And to be authentic is to avoid being a carbon copy or a human being made to the specifications of some doctrine or dogma. The authentic exploration is a fearless examination of what we are, where we came from, and our boundless potential. Authentic human beings try to find the most worthy causes in which to invest the best of themselves. It is only through investing and risking in worthy causes that we can realize the holy essence of our individual light. To me, this is the goal of all goals. There's a constant struggle in many individuals between conformity, nonconformity, and independent thinking. It is far easier to give in to either conformity or nonconformity because either camps would welcome you. But if you think for yourself, you will likely arouse the ire of both camps, and you will be alone with your conscience, which of course I think is the more agreeable company. Aesop captured this scenario in his fables when he said, and I quote, "Men often applaud an imitation and hiss at the real thing."
Close quote.
As we struggle to recover from the shadows of our dark past, where religions permeated every fiber of daily life, we can occasionally get a breath of fresh air. We can get hints of what it really means to be a human being and what we are capable of. Yet there are those who would close the blinds to the light of day and cling to ancient languages that inspire no free thought, no elevation of consciousness. If you think in terms of an archaic language, you're restrained by the perimeters of that archaic times. At first blush, it may be very appetizing to have all of your truths circumscribed into a tight little doctrine. The indoctrinated masses probably feel secure in this familiar nest. The compliant, the ignorant, the smug may feel confident that they alone have the truth. But this lack of questioning, I think, is not human nature. It is human nature to question. After all, we are seekers, wanderers, challengers, explorers, and there will always be someone who will stand up and question every axiom. As a species, human beings are not satisfied with just the material world around us. We're in a constant quest to understand the why of our existence and our relationship to life. Because there are so many unknowns, most people live with a naive faith in the invisible. Our past as human beings is filled with monsters, giants, devils, gods, kings, miracles, and lots of unearthly realms, heavens and hells. To be trapped vacillating between the reality of daily life and the fantasies of the mythical, I think is a rather schizophrenic existence. This type of existence precludes rationality in our quest for the eternal and the spiritual. To acknowledge our ignorance about the eternal I think, is the first step on our trek to the eternal. To accept the use of rational thought in our quest for the spiritual is to accept that the spiritual resides in every single moment of our life. It is in every breath we take. The idea of embracing the now rather than focusing on the afterlife has been scorned in religious thought, but it is the essence of being a spiritual being. The road to emancipation is overrun with religious prohibitions and condemnations, but it is the road that human beings are destined to travel. Throughout all of human history, enlightenment has brightened dark shadows like sunlight beaming through clouds as it sails across the landscape. The light has exposed our dark sides of prejudice, evil, bigotry, and intolerance, but it has also eliminated our capacity for being humane. We are at best, it seems, when times are at their worst, because we always rise above triviality. It appears that we have given too much of ourselves to the social invention of religion, and we have lost too much of ourselves in our dependence on science. There is nothing wrong with the pursuit of the eternal, and there's nothing wrong with scientific inquiry. But to entrust our fate to anything other than our own hands, I think, is folly. To spend one's life in the service of supernatural mythology, or the hope that science is our savior, I think is a waste of incredible talent. It requires courage and a critical mind to glean the lessons from our dark past. Time entreats us to learn these hard lessons, and not to recognize our folly sentences us to spend another 2,000 years in the fog of superstition. It was our religious predecessors who made man so important that gods and devils would fight over us. That has certainly been the main tool used by people to manipulate us into doing their bidding. If people different from us are turned into heathens, devils, and the ungodly, they are our enemies. Therefore, we can kill them. However, it turns out that we are not so important as to have the whole supernatural world fighting over us. As the great Pogo cartoon character said, we have seen the enemy and it are us. We have been slaves of other people's ideology. And to make matters worse, we are far from being free of our responsibility in the mayhem. Rationally, we must conclude that the climate of belief in one human epic fails to transfer reasonably to another epic. To think that religious laws are fixed and unchanged over thousands of years is as laughable as it is tragic. Even Cardinal Newman said, and I quote, "Here below, to live is to change, and to be perfect is to have changed often." Close quote. Religious and social taboos on the evolution of man, society, and consciousness have generally stunted our efforts to awaken the mind of humanity. Our very survival may depend on a rational view of the unceasing, ever-evolving nature of life. To go forward is to accept change, is to awaken life. To concretize the concept of God and religion is to embrace a spiritual stagnation. When I view the world stage, I am surprised and frankly a little embarrassed by my country. A first world nation like the United States, which was founded as a secular nation, boasts a level of belief in the supernatural that is otherwise seen only in third world nations like Iraq, Afghanistan, and Iraq. It is specifically a belief in the invisible that is responsible for such atrocities as the Crusades, the Inquisitions, Holy Wars, and the Holocaust. The continued lethality of religion is expressed daily in landmines, hate speeches, war, and suicide bombers. There seems no end in sight to the madness that is perpetrated by religious zealots, and yet the world sputters on, evolving in fits and spurts. There is no warranty with life. Human beings can be exquisitely humane or sadistically brutal towards others. But sometimes it's just purely the luck of the draw. What family you were born in, what country you were born in, what messages you got when you were young, what experiences you personally have. It requires uncommon courage to rise above ignorance, social pressure, and fear, but it is the path of the spiritual explorer. When all is said and done, the best defense against inhumanity is the embrace of reason, recognizing our responsibility in the here and now. It is in reality that we must defend humanity, and by defending it, we all certainly become scarred and worn. But in my opinion, a face carved by the noble struggle in life is much more beautiful than all the stained glass cathedrals put together. Since the time of our lowbrow, thick-skulled, stout-framed ancestors, many of our numbers have been waiting for someone or something to rescue us. But the wait has been unrewarded. We should be exhausted from looking outside ourselves for answers. Our capacity for reason has outgrown childish fantasies. It is time to realize that the invisible, the mythical, and the supernatural is no place to look for guarantees. We must accept the responsibility for ourselves, our species, and all living things. In assessing where we came from and where we are now, it is easy to get discouraged. But we can rise above the ashes of inhumanity and distance ourselves from our primitive nature. Through reason, understanding, and dialogue, we can set anew the fires of noble purpose. We have for far too long spake as a child, understood as a child, and thought as a child. It is time to put away childish things. Thank you.